In Guatemala, security forces brutally repressed demonstrators who were protesting at the swearing-in of new Supreme Court magistrates, accused of trying to prevent President-elect Bernardo Alévalo from taking office next year. And Panamanian United People Alliance is set to start a national strike against the mining deal in upcoming hours. In Gaza, the Israeli occupation forces do not cease their siege against the Al-Shifa Hospital, even after destroying it almost in its entirety. Armed clashes have occurred on all roads leading to the health center. Hello, welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Wednesday, local media highlighted that the demonstrators that congregated in the surroundings of the Congress of Guatemala were brutally repressed by security forces. The demonstrators came to reject the swearing-in of the new magistrates of the Supreme Court of Justice, which they consider a parliamentary maneuver to prevent the elected government from taking office next year. The Congress suspended the discussion on the budget to elect 13 new magistrates. After a delay of 4 years and 259 attempts, 13 new magistrates of the Constitutional Court were elected. In the meantime, social movements assured that they will remain in the streets until the elected authorities take office on January 14th, so that the will of the people is respected. And in Venezuela, social and political organizations continue to register to participate in the consultative referendum in defense of the Essequibo territory scheduled for December 3rd. Several student organizations and university, artistic, and Venezuelan working-class unions have gone to the National Electoral Council to adhere to the consultative referendum in defense of the Guayana Essequibo. Members of the health sector, of the system of missions and great missions, among others, have also joined the initiative. The documents required for the registration in this electoral contest are received by authorities of the highest electoral body, who have emphasized the importance of the citizen participation in this process. And also in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro affirmed that the measures will soon be taken in response to the government of Guyana's demand to the International Court of Justice to prohibit the constitutional referendum in defense of the Essequibo.
We will deal with this issue later, about the daring action of Guyana, seeking that the International Court of Justice take a decision to prohibit the referendum. It is unprecedented. That is called legal colonialism. The Constitution would be worthless. Independence would be worthless. National sovereignty will be worthless. It is an audacious action that intends to apply a legal colonialism formula never applied before. Illegal colonialism. You, men and women of faith, will know what our vision is and what our spirit is.
And in this context, Venezuelan president also affirmed that the fifth proposed consensus is about advancing in the recovery of the Guyana Essequibo as a historical Venezuelan territory.
A fifth consensus that emerged in the heat of the provocations, attacks, and threats that came from the east, from Guyana, from ExxonMobil, from the Southern Command, is the consensus among all Venezuelan men and women to move towards the full recovery of the Guyana Essequibo as a historical territory of the Venezuelan nation since immemorial times.
In this regard, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, condemned the economic sanctions imposed against the country and demanded the total and absolute lifting of the measures that affect the citizens.
A second necessary consensus is the defense of Venezuela, which is the absolute condemnation of all the economic sanctions against our country and the demand for their total and absolute lifting permanently, without blackmail, without threat, the lifting of all sanctions permanently and forever, enough of sanctions against Venezuela, of harming the economy, society, the life of Venezuelans, of doing damage to the economy, to society, to the life of Venezuelans, is a second consensus that all Venezuelans carry in our hearts. All Venezuelans, except for exceptions of people who asked for sanctions and who still blackmail with asking for sanctions for particular reasons, for individual or group interests.
And Venezuela will hold a historical referendum on the Essequibo next December 3rd. Different political and social organizations have shown their resounding support to the referendum, uniting all the people. To know further details about this upcoming political event, let's watch the following report.
Ahead of the referendum on the Guyana-Essequibo region, Venezuela stands strong and united. Representatives of parties from all the political spectrum come together in defense of the disputed territory, leaving their differences aside. The first cry of unity comes from the president of the Bolivarian Republic, Nicolás Maduro Moros.
Un debate que nos lleve a encontrarnos, a reencontrarnos.
A debate that leads us to meet, to come together, that leads us to unite in national criteria, in strong ideas, defended by all. It is not time for a debate to dissolve public opinion. It is not time for a debate to divide Venezuelans. It is time for a debate to unite the national soul into a whole.
Es tiempo de un debate para unir el alma nacional en un todo.
Up to the occasion, leaders of different political parties gathered at the headquarters of the electoral power, pledging their commitment with the referendum.
Contento pues que hayan asumido los partidos.
We're very happy that the parties, the majority of the political parties that have so far manifested their commitment to work on this referendum, to do everything possible so that all of them participate, all united in the referendum on the Essequibo.
Todos unidos en el referendo por el Essequibo.
Political forces of the left, the center, and the far right stated that the campaign for the Essequibo is a cross-cutting issue in which all converge and find common ground: democracy and legitimate defense of the rights of all Venezuelans.
We're going to be there on December the 3rd because the referendum does not belong to the government. The referendum does not belong to the opposition. The referendum belongs to all Venezuelans who believe that this territory is ours. And I hope that when Dr. Elvis Amoroso announces the unanimous participation that will take place on December the 3rd, all Venezuelans that have this flag, opponents and Chavistas, will be able to celebrate a victory that is not of the government or the opposition, but of the Venezuelans.
In previous weeks, this opposition leader asked the Attorney General for legal actions against the president of Guyana, Irfanali, in addition to sanctioning the companies that operate in marine areas that are pending to be delimited and under dispute.
We have to become one. This is not a problem of internal politics. It is a problem of the state, and we have to respond to this with great seriousness and responsibility. And that is what we have come to ask the Attorney General.
Guyana has also consolidated positions regarding the dispute over the Essequibo. That is why in the street demonstrations in Venezuela, the spirit of unity stands out.
All Venezuelan men and women were united to defend the homeland. There is no distinction of color, no distinction of race, no distinction of creed. All of us for the Venezuelan Guyana, for the objective that is ours.
The referendum is useful because it allows us to tell those who believe that we are divided, to tell all Venezuelans on December the 3rd, to tell them with clarity, with strength, look, yes, here in Venezuela, in the houses, in the Venezuelan family, we have arguments, but don't come to my house because you will find us united, all Venezuelans.
Venezuelans keep supporting the referendum, showcasing that beyond all differences and divisions, the defense of national unity stands paramount. Gladys Quesada, TeleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
In Panama, the United People Alliance will start a national strike against the mining deal in upcoming hours. The only trade union of construction and alike, the Association of Teachers, among other organizations, request the government to repeal the 406 law, which approves the mining concession deal for 20 extendable years in order to allow Canadian company to exploit the biggest mine of Central America exclusively. Unions, social, indigenous, students, and peasant organizations ratified that it's about struggling for their lives and Panama's future. In 11 days, the Supreme Court of Justice will rule in favor of unconstitutionality of the mining concession deal. And let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Israeli occupation forces do not cease their siege against the Al-Shifa Hospital, even after destroying it almost in its entirety. Armed clashes have occurred on all roads leading to the health center in Gaza. The Israeli troops contacted the families still living around Al-Shifa, telling them to leave their homes immediately. They are in this way being forced to walk in the middle of the line of fire. At this hour, despite the occupiers' threat warnings about future bombings, the families remain in what is left of their homes. Al-Shifa is surrounded by tanks and troops, while according to on-site correspondents of the 24 hospitals in the strip, only one is operational. And human rights organizations, media, and regional governments have been categorical in confirming that Israel lied about the Al-Shifa Hospital, the largest one in Gaza, now destroyed. Two grotesque videos were published by the Zionist forces. The first one was withdrawn in the reign of criticism and mockery. Israel bombed for a week a hospital full of patients, medical personnel, and refugees with the excuse that it was the center of operations of Hamas. They have broadcasted images showing about 20-year-old rifles, computers without passwords, and have arrested 200 people who were taken out of the hospital blindfolded without informing the reason or the destination. Medical organizations reported that the equipment of the World Health Organization were reduced to scrap metal. On Wednesday, at least 50 Palestinian civilians were killed by Israel after shelling of a mosque while worshippers were still praying. The event took place in the mosque in the Al-Sabra neighborhood in the center of Gaza. According to the Europe and Middle East human rights monitors, the Israeli attacks have destroyed 66 mosques and have caused very serious damage to 146 others since it began its genocidal operation in Gaza. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights guarantees the right to religion of all human beings, and therefore these attacks constitute a crime against humanity. On the same day, the Zionist army attacked a school in the refugee camp of Nuseirat, where 3 Palestinians were killed. And also in Palestine, the Israeli siege is relentless against hospitals in the Gaza Strip. After 40 days of continuous bombardment, hospital authorities confirmed that 4,710 children have been killed. Humanitarian organizations denounced that ambulances are facing extreme difficulties in carrying wounded children and the bodies of martyrs due to the continuous bombardments. They point out that at least 7 medical workers of the Jordanian field hospital treating groups of children in Gaza were wounded at the entrance of the emergency service after Israeli bombardment. For his part, the Director General of Hospitals in the Gaza Strip also denounced that the Israeli occupation forces have maintained the siege and interrogation of patients, their families, and medical personnel in Al-Shifa Hospital. And in Palestine, Israeli occupation forces shelled Gaza Legislative Council building. The Israeli army attacked the administrative body of the Strip after accusing the facility of also functioning as alleged military offices of the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas. During the last 48 hours of the seizure of the governor's house, Israeli soldiers stormed into the palace. In the same way, occupation troops, together with the fighters of the 7th Brigade Combat Team, have advanced into the territories of the Sheikh al-Jenin and Rimal, retaliating against the centers of power of the Islamic resistance movement. We have come to a second short break, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, where you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden met on Wednesday with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in the Californian city of San Francisco with the framework of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC Summit. The two leaders began the talks by discussing how important and necessary the relationship between the two nations is, especially as the world recovers from the global pandemic. In his remarks, the U.S. president stressed the importance of the competition between Beijing and Washington not turning into a conflict, adding that his previous meetings with Xi have been frank, direct, and useful. At the same time, he pointed out that for countries like China and the U.S., turning backs is not an option. The Chinese leader said that his country's relationship with Washington has never been easy over the past 50 years, but however, it has continued to move forward with its ups and downs. The meeting between the two leaders is intended to help ease tensions between the two countries.
I value our conversation because I think it's paramount that you and I understand each other clearly, leader to leader, with no misconceptions or miscommunication. We have to ensure that competition does not veer into conflict. And we also have to manage it responsibly, that competition. That's what the United States wants and what we intend to do. I also believe that's what the world wants for both of us, candid exchange. We also have a responsibility to our people and the work in the world to work together when we see it in our interest to do so. And the critical global challenges we face, from climate change to counter-narcotics to artificial intelligence, demand our joint efforts.
And for his part, the Chinese president stressed that turning back on each other is not an option, adding that the complicated relationship between China and the U.S. in more than 50 years has continued to move forwards amid twists and turns.
China-U.S. relationship, which is the most important bilateral relationship in the world, should be perceived and envisioned in a broad context of the accelerating global transformations unseen in a century. It should develop in a way that benefits our two peoples and fulfills our responsibility for human progress. China-U.S. relationship has never been smooth sailing over the past 50 years or more, and it always faces problems of one kind or another. Yet it has kept moving forward amid twists and turns. For two large countries like China and the United States, turning their back on each other is not an option. It is unrealistic for one side to remodel the other, and conflict and confrontation has unbearable consequences for both sides. I'm still of the view that major country competition is not the prevailing trend of current times and cannot solve the problems facing China and the United States or the world at large.
Hundreds of former rebels and government troops in South Sudan Unified Forces were deployed at a long overdue ceremony on Wednesday, marking progress for the country's lumbering peace process. The world's newest nation has struggled to find its footing since gaining independence from Sudan in 2011, battling violence, endemic poverty, and natural disasters. The unification of forces loyal to the President Salva Kiir and his rival, Vice President Riek Machar, was a key condition of the 2018 peace deal that ended a 5-year conflict in which nearly 400,000 people died. Tens of thousands of former fighters were integrated into the country's army in August last year, but none have been deployed until now, with the delays fueling frustration in the international community. And in Argentina, more and more citizens and sectors of society are expressing their opposition to the national project proposed by Liberty Advances Party, a force that will compete next Sunday against the candidate of Union for the Homeland for the new presidency of the South American country. More details in our report from our correspondent Carolina Silvestre.
In relation to education, the plan proposed by Javier Milei is inadmissible for Argentina.
They're trying to impose the market laws to the social, political, economic, educational, health, and cultural life of the Argentinians. And it is not like that. In front of the market laws, we have to put a state that regulates, that is, that guarantees the rights. Concretely, the rights that are established in the national constitution.
And that's why it is essential to continue to make visible in all corners of the South American country what is at stake in the next ballot.
We are very concerned because it would be a step backwards after the 40 years of democracy we have lived, that someone who preaches denialism, who denies the heroes of the Malvinas and our grandmothers, could become president.
That they don't take away from us everything that has been fought for, everything that has been worked for. The rights of working men and women will continue to develop and will continue to exist as long as we are with Massa. The other one is way out of his mind, really way out of his mind. I wouldn't dare to vote for him, apart from the fact that I grew up in a public school, in community centers, all public, so I'm going to vote for Massa.
According to those interviewed, the presidential formula that guarantees social peace, national unity, and right, it is that of Union for the Homeland.
My expectations for Sunday are obviously the best, especially because I am a Peronist, and I consider that being part of a political force whose objective is the happiness of the Argentinian people, and there being nothing more deserving for this memorable, brave, and courageous people than its happiness. I consider that there is nothing else but victory. Besides, I am very confident. I trust a lot in these people. I know that these people has memory. I know that these people will know how to choose the best option to continue having a country.
It now remains to wait for the citizens to express themselves at the polls on November 19th to find out who will lead the destiny of Argentina.
Carolina Silvestre, TeleSUR, Buenos Aires.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories at our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social networks, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.